Luminousz Star. Welcome to the channel. My current subscribers, thank you guys and gals so much for your subscription, and thank you for keeping me passionate about keeping Luminousz Star channel active. If this is your first time visiting, welcome to Luminousz Star. Please check the description box below for further details to today's video. Also, don't forget to like and or share today's video. First point, the dark triad consists of 3 different traits or characteristics of narcissism, psychopathy, and machiavellianism. These traits are considered dark due to a malignant, venomous, and evil quality. Next point. The cluster B personality is a combination of histrionic, borderline, antisocial, and narcissistic personality disorders. Often the narcissistic personality disorder is misconstrued with the cluster B personality. Narcissistic personality disorder is only one symptom of a cluster B personality. All who have a narcissistic personality has a cluster B personality. Yet not all who have a cluster B personality are narcissists. Okay, so this is one that a lot of us get mixed up or confused about. Whenever someone says that a person is a narcissist, they may not automatically go to a cluster B personality. So this is why it's interesting that when a lot of people say that a person is a narcissist, they don't think about the cluster B personality. The cluster B personality does consist of the histrionic personality disorder, the borderline personality disorder, and the antisocial personality disorder, as well as the narcissistic personality disorder. Those are 4 different personality disorders which can be diagnosed one without the other. The cluster B personality, the key word is cluster. So these different types of personality disorders consist of the cluster B personality. Narcissists and cluster B personalities, they usually don't like it when people point out that they're only human beings having a human experience, or they are capable of making mistakes. They are capable of failing or making poor choices. Narcissists and cluster B personalities, again, they don't like this. Whereas a psychopath, they could care less, even if you catch them red-handed. And sociopaths, I decided to add this into my presentation because sociopaths are also sometimes misconstrued with the psychopaths. Okay, let's look at some of the characteristics of cluster B personalities, narcissists, and psychopaths. Narcissists and cluster B personalities tend to be grandiose, whereas psychopaths tend to have shallow emotions. Okay, cluster B personalities they usually lack empathy. Psychopaths usually lack guilt. Cluster B personalities, narcissists, strong sense of entitlement. Psychopaths, criminal versatility. Narcissists and cluster B personalities tend to be hypersensitive to criticism, whereas psychopaths are very impulsive. Narcissists and cluster B personalities are quick to anger, whereas psychopaths tend to enjoy torturing animals. And this usually is during their childhood, by the way. I just wanted to make that side note. Narcissists and cluster B personalities have an inability to regulate their emotions, whereas psychopaths tend to have a demonic behavior. Narcissists and cluster B personalities can be spiteful. Psychopaths tend to be bullies. Now, there are some traits here and characteristics here that cluster B personalities, narcissists, and psychopaths do have in common, such as having the lack of empathy. Psychopaths also have lack of empathy, but usually it's really the lack of guilt that's more prominent. All right, signs of histrionic personality: impulsive, demanding, highly emotional, seductive. Here are some of their tactics: speaks over others, interrupts conversations, a chronic flirt, instigates shenanigans, loves to play the victim. Borderlines can sometimes have deep abandonment issues, whereas narcissists sometimes abandon their children and can abandon relationships with other adults without taking any responsibility. So borderlines tend to inflict harm on themselves or self-medicate, or what you call become cutters or self-mutilation. Whereas the narcissists, or those who have a narcissistic personality, they tend to inflict harm on others for a source supply. They tend to be the ones who have the diabolical tactics for source supply. All of this is to ensure their false self-image survives. The narcissist is usually the one who abandons their own children, and they tend to abandon relationships. As adults, they tend to abandon relationships with other adults, and they don't take responsibility for it. Narcissists often can idealize others only to devalue him or her, all the while mimicking and exploiting their expressions of joy and love. Borderlines tend to feel their emotions more deeply and engage in a behavior known as splitting, which is when he or she feels love but then quickly reverts to feeling hatred for others. It is possible that some narcissists have childhood trauma, but it is more than likely that many borderlines do. So narcissists, they can have childhood trauma. However, according to research by psychologists, more borderlines tend to have childhood trauma. Illustration of cluster personality disorders. Cluster A, which is the odd, bizarre, and eccentric. Cluster B personality, dramatic, erratic. This is the antisocial personality disorder. The borderline personality disorder. The histrionic personality disorder. And the narcissistic personality disorder. Finally, the cluster C personality, which is the anxious and the fearful. It is the cluster B and cluster C personalities which tend to become involved, but over time can repel. Values and certain core beliefs of each person in the relationship has to be similar in order to resolve any challenges, issues, and differences. There are a total of 10 personality disorders, which is a rigid, unhealthy way a person functions, behaves, and thinks. The clusters of these personalities are originated and featured in the DSM-5. Whenever there's a threat or a challenge to the false self-image, the narcissist and cluster B personality, they have, again, it doesn't match their psychological image. So if for instance, if you go to him or her and you say, well, you broke my heart, when you did or said this or that, the narcissist and cluster B personality has an issue with that because that is not their false self-image. Their false self-image is of a person who does not harm people. Believe it or not, it is of a person who can do no wrong. So whenever a person comes along and challenges that by word and or deed, then the narcissist and cluster B personality sometimes claims narcissistic injury. Sometimes this is where they go into the rages. And then sometimes, again, this is when that mask slips off and the fangs and the claws and, they come out. And a person sometimes is not ready for that. So this is just something to be aware of, especially if it's early in the relationship. Just be aware that cluster B personality types and those who have a narcissistic personality, they can be addicted to other people. But not only that, they are addicted, if not obsessed, in making sure that their false self-images are thriving and surviving. 4 types of narcissists. They can be grandiose, malignant, covert, and communal. So let's go right to the grandiose first. The grandiose narcissist is usually one who is very superior or looks at his or herself as very superior. Okay, and they usually like it when other people envy them, believe it or not. They also like it when people admire them. Narcissists and cluster personalities who are grandiose, they're usually under delusions of grandeur. They often daydream about being very rich, wealthy, very, very attractive, living a lavish lifestyle. And sometimes they like to think that they actually live this type of life. They can be a person who is in debt, yet they would live as if they are very rich. So this type of narcissist is under delusions of grandeur. And a lot of us have actually had interactions with these types of narcissists. The second type of narcissist is a malignant narcissist. Usually this one is overlapping the psychopath and a person who has an antisocial personality disorder. The malignant narcissist usually does not show any remorse, but the surprising thing is that they can feel deep shame after they have pulled certain shenanigans and after they have engaged in diabolical tactics for narcissistic supply. They can feel deep shame. However, their guilt is usually not deep enough where they will stop doing what they're doing, such as pulling shenanigans. All right, so moving on to the covert narcissist. This person is often treated for depression. Not saying that they are misdiagnosed all the time. It is interesting how some covert narcissists are diagnosed with depression and are treated for depression. Sometimes they do have depression. They usually come off like a person who's very depressed because the covert narcissist has the attitude of nobody really gets me. Nobody really knows how great I really am, okay? So the covert narcissist is very underhanded when it comes to obtaining narcissistic supply. You know, they usually like to come off like a person who's a martyr or a saint, you know, somebody who has suffered a lot of things, yet they will leave out the part where they have harmed and hurt other people. They usually have a victim mentality. So the covert narcissist can be very slick and underhanded when it comes to obtaining the narcissistic supply from other people, because again, they come off like a person who is very, very depressed, and they will often say things like, people really don't understand me, and nobody really gets me, or nobody really gets how great I really am. Okay, that kind of thing. And they usually blame other people for their mistakes, yet at the same time they will not take responsibility for it. All right, so the last one is communal narcissist. Now the communal narcissist seeks to have a lot of validation. They could be a person who's a great philanthropist, or they like other people to view them as such. They're always giving to charity, yet they will make a very big deal about it because they will do these things, but yet they will tell other people, they will broadcast it, they will tell other people what good things they have done, yet they lack empathy for the people that they're so-called giving charity out to, okay, or they're helping. Characteristics of narcissists and cluster personality types: superficial, inability to emotionally regulate, they lack empathy, they can be very or hypersensitive to criticism. They can dish it, but they can't take it. And they usually are very quick to anger, and they can be very spiteful. Sometimes they come off like quite the antagonist, and sometimes they're very self-righteous. So these are just some of the characteristics. There are so many more, but I really wanted to point out some of the highlightable ones. I had mentioned before how some narcissists and cluster personalities, they can be very spiteful when they have taken that secret vow to never love anyone anymore for any reason. Usually it is out of spite that they do this, okay? Because narcissists and cluster personality types, they're very self-righteous. It's their way or the highway, right? And they can come off to be quite the antagonist. Sometimes they are jealous and they're envious of other people, and they want to sabotage their efforts to continue to thrive forward, to continue to shine. Nobody's going to outshine the narcissist, okay? The narcissist and cluster personality, these types, they often don't want anyone to outshine him or her. So they might sometimes come off like they are the antagonist. The narcissists and cluster personality types, sometimes a lot of their relationships are not only dysfunctional, but they're very superficial. They don't care about how you make them feel. They're more interested in how you make them look. Cycle or pattern of narcissistic abuse. Idealize, devalue, discard. Additional patterns of narcissistic abuse is hoovering and then recycling. I say that the hoovering is the 1-2 punch, because when they hoover, before they actually hoover you back in, the first sucker punch is when they are coming up in conversation. It could be via the enablers and flying monkeys that he or she has recruited. You're no longer in the relationship with the narcissist and cluster personality. You have gone no contact, right? You're thriving forward. Yet the narcissist and the cluster personality, they're not taking no for an answer. So the first sucker punch again is when it seems like they're lingering over your life. So this is where the hovering comes in. Okay, so it's like this dark cloud that lingers over your life. So wherever you move, they move. They're coming up in conversation. They may be showing up at your job. They want you to see them, but they will not approach you. They will not make contact because you've gone no contact. They know you're not going to deal with him or her directly. So they will recruit flying monkeys, and they will recruit their enablers to bring them up in conversation. Sometimes you are questioned about the relationship, or why did you two have a fallout. The narcissist and cluster personality, they plan and strategize all of this. And I still say the hoovering is the 1-2 sucker punch, because before they actually hoover you back in, they're already taking steps to hoover you back in. And it's so subtle that a lot of us miss it. When they're coming up in conversation, and so when we're out somewhere and we may see them at a distance, they may show up at the job, they may show up at school, they may show up at places that you frequent. The cluster personality and narcissists, they know exactly what they're doing. They're hoovering you back in before they have actually hoovered you back. The second sucker punch is when they have actually hoovered you back in, because now it's just like old times. You're visiting again. You're interacting with the narcissist or cluster personality once again. You're having them over for dinner. You're going over for dinner. You're hanging out or whatever. Or if this is a romantic situation, you're involved with him or her again. Okay, and they do all of this. Once they hoover you back in, they do all of that to recycle. It just starts all over again. It's a vicious cycle. So once they have hoovered you back in, the vicious cycle starts all over again. They idealize you again. Then before you know it, you're going to be devalued again. Then you're going to be discarded again. And make no mistake, they can wait for years before they attempt to hoover you back in, all to recycle and start the process all over again. The narcissistic cycle of abuse can be very vicious. All right, let's move forward. Tool number 1, beware of the gaslight technique. Most, if not all, narcissists and or cluster personality types use this particular diabolical tactic in hopes to obtain narcissistic supply. By gaslighting others, the narcissist and or cluster personality denies the realities of others around him or her. Take steps to practice personal boundaries without apology and or explanation. Narcissists and cluster personality types do not respect nor practice personal boundaries. They often lack any regard for morality, therefore do not consider or value others practicing the golden rule. All right, so take steps to practice personal boundaries without apology and or explanation. Next tool. Build and work your support base. Expressing what you are or have experienced due to emotional involvement with the cluster personality types might prove to be a game changer. Having others around you who understand your plight and what narcissism is provides you exposure to the possibilities of having positive relationships with others.